Welcome back to the Smugglers Den. Here we are with episode 4, and I have joining me this week Jason. You may know him as the guy who's the owner of Broken Egg Games. You may not. If you don't know that, what have you been doing? His tokens are amazing for all his games. Welcome to the show, Jason.
Thanks for having me on, Tiny. Super excited.
All right. So I'm curious here. I know you haven't been playing Destiny quite as long as I have, which is like the first moment you were able to. So when did you sort of jump on this train and go, this Destiny thing looks pretty good, actually?
Well, I mean, the mechanics just seem really solid, and I've been willing to follow Lucas as far as his FFG products wherever he goes, or at least give it a try. And after giving it a try, I guess I should say before that, I was like, I really don't want to get into this game. The collectible thing kind of scared me, but after evaluating the price point and evaluating the game itself, I kind of jumped on right around the time when the pre-release was happening. And then from there, I've just been kind of entrenched, and I'm just super excited to see how the combinations move forward in the future, because I believe that there's a lot of cards in the game, and most of them are good, or most of them are playable in one instance that you can find, and I think that I'll be interested to see how that goes forward. But I've always had confidence in specifically Lucas, but Fantasy Flight has done a pretty good job opening their games. So the right out of the gate, a lot of times they either get it or they kind of understand the path that they need to take, a la like Game of Thrones. Like, I feel like it's done a really good job maturing as the game goes on. Mm-hmm. But I'm excited to see where it goes, and I think that it's got to be great. And it's crazy, we talk so much about it. You've had so many episodes of this show, and like you mentioned, I own Broken Egg Games, and we've made tokens for it. Many other companies have made products for it, and we're still the day before release.
It's hard for me to believe that. I feel like I've been playing this game for months now.
Yeah.
Like, I've played at least 150 games of Destiny, and the game isn't out yet. That seems weird to me.
It's great. You're not a playtester, right? Anything. You're just playing
just
the
a
game
guy
as you can. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and it's funny because normally I am a playtester for games I love, and that would make a lot of sense. But I didn't even know this game was coming until they were like, "Hey, by the way, all my friends are like, Tiny, you might want to check this game out. I know you love Star Wars." And I was like, "What? Huh? Oh my goodness, that game looks amazing."
And there's always the hook, right? It's very refreshing that you look at this game and you're like, you know what? This actually has some potential. This is a pretty fun game. And then you're like, oh yeah, it's also a Star Wars game. Finally, a fun and challenging game for Star Wars.
A good Star Wars game? I mean, we haven't had that in a while.
Outside of miniature games, yeah, it's been real.
That's good. I meant card game. Yeah, the CCG from Decipher was good. The TCG from Wizards was and the LCG from FFG. I'm gonna give it a no comment because some people get really mad when I talk about that game.
I'll say it didn't mature the way that it wanted to. It had some interesting stuff go on, but it just didn't pan out.
Well, that sounds fair.
That's my opinion.
All right, so how much product have you bought so far? Have you gotten anything in your hands yet, in your physical hands?
It's so funny. I actually haven't, and not for lack of trying, but I was unable to make my pre-release date because of an emergency. I was all planned on doing it. Like, that week was like the week I turned the corner, speaking with all sorts of people in the community, talking about it, and I just wasn't able to get out to the pre-releases that I wanted to. My goal was to pick up I was going to try to get my hands on 4 starters, and then as many packs as I could, and then I still yet to have had one. That being said, I have played with my friends, Destiny, all sorts of friends, multiple people playing with their stuff, so I've definitely felt the product, I've used the product, I've physically been a part of it, I've used it digitally on tabletop sim, and so I'm chomping at the bit. Hopefully, maybe tomorrow, some store I can find for a starter, 2, 3, or 4. I'm willing to get all 4, and then from there, just opening a few cases.
Yeah. I've got 2 boxes that are coming. I got an email from Miniature Market today saying, good news, you're going to be getting them soon, so that's exciting.
That is good. That is good.
So I know you've played a number of games, and you've played a number of dice games. So I think one of the problems that a lot of people have when they look at this game is twofold. One, it's that it's a collectible game, and that's a whole nother side issue. But a lot of my other friends have just looked at the dice and went, dice plus cards? Ugh. And we've talked about this before, but I'm curious to hear what your thought is about this concept.
Yeah, I mean, to kind of give a broad view, I mean, dice generally, other than what you see on board games, in the gaming community, they're used a lot in miniature games. That's kind of like the thing that I've grown up playing. I've played all of the biggest titles, and you start somewhere like old Warhammer Fantasy before a lot of the rules got really complex, and you kind of just rolled dice and you took those results as it was. And then moving forward, we got new mechanics, and actually, the better the game, or the newer the game that was actually successful, is generally based on how good of a dice mechanic is it, and how much control as a player, how much can we leverage skill into the dice and leverage your ability to actually manipulate those dice to do things that you want to do. Taking it from a 1 die system to a 2d6 based system where you're rolling on a much broader spectrum, looking for those middle numbers 6, 7, and 8 far more often than you're looking at the 2s and the 12s, is something that the game War Machine did, and that's why it's really popular. And then moving further, you see different randomization mechanics come out. And while I haven't played Dice Masters, this game does seem, as far as it being scary for the dice, I haven't yet seen someone play 2 games of this game and felt like they truly were dice screwed. It's pretty hard to do that. Yeah. It's generally either the opponent being able to deny you the ability to do that by stripping your hand, or by you just misplaying and being greedy and overextending, which is something that if you're not super familiar with, using things as resources other than the cards that they're actually printed, or other than what the card is printed, these cards are resources, and if you overextend by using their ability in a mediocre fashion, then maybe you should be looking to reroll, which is very valuable.
Yeah, it's interesting. In the 150 games I've played, I think maybe 4 games have come down to the roll of the dice, which that is not very many. Like, I've been continuously surprised by that. I had a game yesterday where it did, right? It was like I had Luke and Akbar and all the tools to set up this amazing turn using all in, and I roll my dice and they're like all blanks. I only needed 1 focus on all my dice. I pitch a card, mostly blanks again. I pitch another card, mostly blanks again, and my opponent is going, dude, I've never seen rolls like this.
Yeah, I mean, the percentages are going to be small. It's going to happen. I mean, we're playing a game like Magic or even Game of Thrones, where maybe you have a combo deck and you're looking for a piece, and you even have the searching abilities to look for a piece, but it just doesn't come up, and then that's just as bad as having random dice.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
For sure.
So it's gonna happen in every game, and I do feel like your mitigation in this game has been really solid. I mean, after seeing tons and tons and tons of games, people can generally get what they want. Sometimes timing is important, specifically with the rush decks, but that's just like playing a Magic deck, because you're drawing 7 cards off the top and then 1 every turn, and you're hoping that the cards that you get out ahead in the beginning of a game are gonna, like a red deck wins style Magic game, for those familiar with Magic. You're hoping you draw your 1-drop that's going to be doing all the work that you want, and then from there you're hoping to just go right up the line through all of your very even curve. So it's just as random as that.
Yeah, and to be really clear on something, that was an aggro deck, right? It was like I had built that deck to work towards 1 or 2 turns to be my blowout turns, and so you're putting more focus on the dice for a very short amount of time, and that's a dangerous way to play a game with dice, right? And so when something like that happens, you really need to evaluate that from a broader spectrum, right? And to say like, well, I sort of put myself in this spot, right? Like, it was unlikely I would roll this bad this many times in a row, but I specifically built a deck that would sit like this. I didn't have to do that.
Yeah, when you play a dice game, your goal is actually to roll, or the best way to win games is to be able to control the game in a way that you get to roll dice as many times as you possibly can. Because the less dice you give yourself a chance to roll, sure, the expected value of 2 dice, rolling a 2-die combination, for example, is 7, like in craps.
Yeah.
But the reality is, you roll any single instance of that, and it doesn't. You don't have an average. You don't have a set of numbers to actually view. It's an expected value. It's not an average. Right. An average requires that numbers, and people use the term average all the time, and that's just not what that word means. You actually have to have a set of values to represent that. So when you do go aggro, you're throwing down your Grievous, and you're hoping that in the first 2 turns he's able to take someone out. And if it just doesn't come up like that, then that's just the win and loss of your deck, and you have to accept that.
Yeah. One of my favorite decks is I have a mill deck that plays Patience, and if you don't know what Patience is, Patience says remove as many cards as you want. Remove as many dice as you want to mill that many cards from your opponent's deck. The reason I love this so much, I literally do not care what the dice say. They can be a row of blanks, and I'm like, patience? Just as good as if those were all awesome dice. And I really like that feeling of in a dice game to, just to basically say, yeah, whatever dice, I don't care. Screw me as much as you want. It actually doesn't matter this game.
But now you're at the mercy of the deck and the
Yes,
cards in your hand. And
that's true.
hopefully that doesn't go away.
But it's a small deck with a really generous mulligan system, and you can draw up as much as you want to get to that patience. That's my favorite
But
part of mitigating the dice, is that the deck is so generous.
yeah, it is. It is very generous, and it's nice. I mean, it feels good. I mean, I've seen you mention it before, and you and I are both fairly accomplished Thrones players, at least, or at least I had some success in two, and you've obviously played forever and done very well for yourself. When you have a 60 card deck, it just kind of feels like you might never see what you're looking for. So
Yeah.
30 cards, taking a sixth of it off the top in the beginning, drawing every turn guaranteed. It's very likely that you can do stuff. And I think that discard at the end of the turn, not that this is what we're talking about, but discard at the end of the turn, I think is something that as we go forward, the better players are going to recognize. While a card might be good, you need to find a better card for the situation, and getting rid of good cards to find better cards is going to be a skill in its own.
Yeah, that's a whole topic for the future of sort of figuring out, like, knowing your deck so well and knowing the matchup so well that you know what the 8 cards are that you need. And if this is not one of them, well, in another match, it's amazing. Right now, you got to pitch it.
Yeah, and even if it's just okay, or you look at it, you're like this, like I'm thinking like a card that has like moderate dice manipulation, like a reroll, like a like just I don't know, just something
Sure.
like a I don't know. So there's lots of cards like that, but regardless, maybe the dice manipulation isn't important to like mess with your opponent's die. Maybe getting that certain upgrade is just going to be what's going to let you win the game. So even though it's a great card, it's probably really affordable. It's just going to be tough to hold on to.
Yeah, I agree. All right. Well, let's move on to first question of the day, which is the game drops tomorrow. What's the first deck you're hoping to make? Mine, I won't be able to make it almost certainly, but what's the one you are hoping to make?
Well, it's probably a deck that I had talked with you about. My good friend and coworker, Zuffer Tejani, he helped make this deck, and we've been talking about it a little bit more, trying to get it right. It's pretty much his concept, but it's really weird because it's with a character that I thought was pretty bad and pretty maligned, but we've had some success with it, and it's kind of fun and aggressive. And it's a elite Balatik,
Whoa.
Django, and Stormtrooper deck, and it just comes out of the gate swinging, and specifically into 3 character matchups, it is incredibly powerful. Being able to use Balatik twice, Django getting the free actions, you're really up on your opponent. And sometimes, because you kind of gun for a weak character, sometimes it's very unlikely that they're even going to be able to resolve their dice on turn 2. So they're pretty much looking to possibly even not even get character dice on the second turn from the character that you're gunning for.
Interesting. So do you play a lot of redeploy weapons then? It seems like Balatik is this weird guy where as soon as you put anything on him, he just melts instantly. So it feels like if you're going to play Balatik and you want to actually use his ability and make it effective, you want to be running redeploy stuff. Are you doing stuff like that?
Yeah, there's definitely some redeploy in there. Holdout blasters and the F rifle for red they're both obviously really fantastic. But a lot of stuff is going on Django. You want to get that free activation into the roll. So likely your first play is going to be an upgrade on Django, which is what you're mulliganing for. Likely something like a like a jetpack, which is just fantastic. And the die are very synergistic in the deck. Yes, flamethrower is melee, but outside of that and the one melee that Django has, it's pretty much all range damage. You get a lot of range support as well. So it's been really good, and I've really enjoyed it. It does a lot of damage. It comes out swinging really fast, and it's certainly a lot more interesting than I thought it could be. And you even have some soft manipulation cards like On the Hunt, which are absolutely insane.
Wait, did you just call On the Hunt soft manipulation? That card is just brutal.
Sure, but I'm saying it's not like I would say it's not guaranteed, and it's only like one of your cards because it's yellow. It's yellow and red, so it's not like you're being able to play as much manipulation as, say, you get out of a blue character. But between that and cards like Scramble and cards, other things like that, you're able to kind of take a little bit off the top of your opponent while you're trying to work with what you have, and it's brutal. It comes out swinging, and I've really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to play against that because to me, when I hear a deck like that, it just doesn't sound that scary. Like
Sure.
removing one of Django's dice sounds less than ideal to me. But I will admit, I love 3 character decks. Like 3 character decks, I feel like are going to be the strongest because it's so much health. It's hard to eat through all of that health.
I don't believe that Django. And I know, and that actually makes Balatik really good. I actually don't really love Django's dice. Like they're fine.
Hmm.
It's like mediocre damage and just extra resources. So the second dice actually isn't as important, and it's really about
Interesting.
getting that free act, that stealing that activation up front when you put a card like a flamethrower, or you don't really want to put on the hunt on him, but on the hunt's fine on him too, obviously. And then we've got holdout blasters, all sorts of rifles and things like that, and then obviously the flamethrower, which is going to be a really big carry, and it's going to do a lot of damage, and also thermal detonator even, which I am running, and it that also really can thin the field, and it's very brutal in the right situation.
Yeah, it's funny because I run thermal detonator in a mill deck and never, ever, ever trigger its special
Well,
side.
because you're milling.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
it's really funny for me to hear someone be like, "Yeah, you triggered special, and it's awesome." I'm like, yeah, I guess it does have a special.
Yeah, I mean, if that's what you're stuck with early, it's not necessarily that you necessarily want to play it right out of the bat,
Yeah.
but it is very good, and it does combo well with other yellow cards. For example, Ace in the Hole is pretty good with if you want to.
Sure.
If you want to run one, I think I have one of those in the deck. It's really not like a main focus of mine, but it's
Yeah.
it's a way to get some burst potential out there.
Sure.
And they've got some and yellow. You get all these yellow dice, which actually are not hard to get a bunch of, and you can really get around the dice manipulation game. You roll a bad roll, their characters are low likely. You just scoop up all of Balatik's dice and maybe some of Django's dice to fight dirty.
Yeah.
Pull off a character, you
That
get all
card's
your dice
crazy.
back, you roll them again. It's there's a lot of good synergy. It's surprising because, like I said, this is a very controlled game, and you're always looking at what your opponent's dice are, and you're kind of basing it around that. And
Mhm.
a card like Fight Dirty just completely ruins that ability to do what you're
Yeah.
looking for, specifically with Bala, because if you can finish it off, if he's got 3 dice, which is only
Ooh,
one upgrade, 4 dice maybe, you're gonna Fight Dirty their character off and then re-roll,
that's
and it's
true.
pretty gross.
Are you running 2 copies of Fight Dirty?
I am.
Yeah, Fight Dirty is the card that I'm most excited about that has been the least effective for me. Because it's hard. There just aren't as many quality yellow upgrades right now as there are in other factions. And so when I look through that, I'm like, ooh, oh man, like what am I going to run? Gaffy sticks with this just to have a better Fight Dirty? I don't
I
think
mean,
I can
I've
do
got
that.
I think I've got. Let me pull it up here. I think I've got 4 different ones I'm running 2 of. Definitely jetpack, flamethrower on the hunt, and thermal, as well as is there
Maybe
one more?
Cunning?
I don't think there's one more. No, I'm not running cunning. That's kind of
Hmm,
not in
sure.
the vein. No, that's it. Those are the and then one holdout blaster and 2 F11Ds.
Yeah, I think just having 2 Balatik dice, that's 2 right there, that his dice aren't so good that you're upset to throw away for Fight Dirty. I think
Exactly.
that combination, Elite Balatik and Fight Dirty, is a really nice combo.
It is. It is. It's very fun, and he's been really great, and he does support really well with the focus, which is very rare out of the yellow character, or not the yellow characters, but the villain characters. With especially on their die, you're getting that focus, which is often going to be 4 damage from a flamethrower plus 3 range damage if
Sure.
you're ahead of the curve. And often, what'll happen too is because of these rerolls, specifically on a turn where you kill a character, you're likely to not claim the battlefield because you have so many dice that you're resolving.
Yeah.
So it's often that they kind of get stuck either passing or they get stuck in a weird thing where they want the ability of the battlefield, they claim it, and then you kind of just have a free for all with your dice and can put them in a really good spot with like a gross reroll.
Yeah. That's another topic that I really want to talk about at some point is this idea of taking the battlefield early. Like I never want a deck where I take the battlefield because you're just leaving yourself at the mercy of your opponent. Like please don't do crazy things to me now.
Yeah, I often don't have it as the plan. I do like it when I can tell that that's their plan, and then you just give up a resource or give up a shield or something
Yeah,
like that to throw their, like, oh, I was looking to resolve this without a resource, and now I don't have it. Like the using the one
yeah,
of the battlefields that resolves a die regardless of what the costs are, and
yeah.
that's the only time I really go early. I like to try to see what we can do and play the game as slow as possible
Yeah,
in your turns.
I think Fight Dirty is the card that I am most excited to break, and I think I'll try that with Elite Politic in my near future. I
Mhm.
am running it in the deck that I am most hoping to make, which is a deck I will not be able to make, which is Elite Jabba Vader. It has the following legendaries: two Jabbas, one Vader, two Force Chokes, and two Crime Lords. That is 7 legendaries, man.
Yeah, wow, that's
I'm in a little trouble.
pretty hefty.
Yeah. And what I love about the deck is that the way I'm building it is it's a control deck that has burst in it. So it has all the control cards you would expect from some sort of blue control deck and yellow. And Jabba's dice are amazing, by the way. You can easily mill people. Just you roll 2 discard sides on Jabba and Vader's ability. That's all their cards. Their cards are done. It's insane.
Yep, yep.
So it's a fun deck. It's got burst in it. Like I have a Force Strike in it. I have a Fight Dirty in it. What I want to do is be able to sort of plink down one of the characters and then burst them down. So now I'm dealing with one character as I'm milling them, controlling them, whatever. I have options. I have the card that when you take resources from your opponent, you get them. So that's really good, and I have lots of ways to control their resources. It's just a highly flexible deck, and what I like most about it is it takes the most skill out of any of the decks that I've played. You really have to recognize, like, what is your opponent's plan? What are the cards I need in this particular matchup? What are the sides I want in this particular matchup? And I really like this feeling of I'm not just rolling dice and playing cards. I am really thinking, several turns ahead. Like if I draw the Crime Lord next turn, am I set up to be able to play it? Just all of these different aspects with this deck, and I really enjoy it. I don't know if it's the best deck, but I really like playing it.
Yeah, I think it seems really good. It seems like in an extended game you have quite an advantage, and then you do have the ability to be aggressive if need be.
Yeah.
I do see the one thing that I notice about the deck is going to be your defense is going to be your control, and it's not. And there's nothing else. So it's not. That's kind of a Sith thing in the first place. But some Siths do have shields and things like that. But if you're not controlling it, if they have a lot of natural dice that do damage and
Yeah.
they don't require resources and things like that, that's where I've seen when I see people play Jabba, that get in trouble because Jabba's like just kind of sitting there.
Yeah, I mean, I have so many mitigation cards though in the deck.
Sure.
It's like isolation, he doesn't like you, anger, just any mitigation card that there is, I pretty much have. And then the other cool thing is it does have shields because you have the totally crazy yellow card of Hunker Down that says, exhaust it, give your character a shield, and you do that every turn. And unless they can burst through with enough melee damage, they can never get rid of this thing, and it's ridiculous.
Yeah, no, that's true. It's true.
So it's a really strong deck. I'm really liking it. I feel like there's a lot of different cards I could put in it. The problem is, I have the 2 Force Chokes, and you have to have the Jabba Invader to make it work. And then I think you need at least one Crime Lord. I think a deck like this needs that extra win condition of, okay, I can't quite mill them out. I can't quite kill them. I'm getting resources, for days. I gotta have a way to win this thing. Crime Lord is that out for you.
Crime Lord is a very powerful card, and it's very interesting what happens to the game when it hits the table.
Yes.
And I'll be interested to see how people play around it. It's a heavy hitter. It really hurts.
Yeah, one of the really interesting things about Crime Lord also is it's a good die. Like, what I'll often do is use it for the 2 shields to keep people alive. Like, that's
Yeah.
amazing.
Yep.
The other thing is it makes your opponent freak out. Like, let's say they're rolling like a Vader Raider deck, and they see you getting a couple resources, and they hit the Disrupt with their Vader. They're actually going to use the Disrupt, so you can't Crime Lord them, rather than doing stuff like No Mercy for 6 damage. They freak out and decide to go another route, which just gives you more and more time to put all that control together, the Force throws and the on the hunts, and just control all their dice on one roll.
Yeah, it's very good because it goes on to Java only, and when you activate Java, you get to roll. If you're not satisfied with your Crime Lord die, like it's maybe an early special that you don't want, you get to re-roll it. If that pops into a two focus, now your whole board state is pretty much settled, and you can do the
Yeah.
damage or the disruption that you're looking to do.
Yep. It's a really fun, solid deck with just tons of control, and that's who I am. I'm a control player, and the reason I'm a control player is because I hate variants. Like I'm always looking to control variants as much as possible, and as the control player, it feels like you have a lot more flexibility there. Like, oh, my dice were bad. That's okay. I can still be flexible and do this thing and do that thing. I don't have to go down one set path with this deck. I really like that.
Yeah, I like that too.
All right, let's move on to a really important question, and that is when we're talking about factions and colors. That is, villain or heroes in different colors. There's definitely going to be heroes that are drawing you in one direction, but what are the cards for each faction and color that really draw you there? And what I mean by that is it's not necessarily the best card in the game in your opinion, but it's a card that you're thinking like, ooh, I really want that card in a deck. Therefore, I need a red villain because this card is so good. And I'll start with an example. And for me, this is the most basic example, and that is the Holocron. Blue villains, Holocron is such a good card that, like, anytime I'm thinking, I need a card that does resources and is cheap, or I need a card that has a focus side and is cheap, or I just want free force powers, I'm immediately drawn to blue villains and saying, yeah, I mean, I don't know how I can get away from this card. Like, it's almost a disease for me that I go to build a deck and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna build a red yellow villain deck, and then I'm like, what kind of idiot am I that I don't have Holocron in this deck? This deck has to have a Holocron. That's just a given. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I mean, I know you said you didn't want to talk about the best card in the game, but I actually think Holocron is the best card in the game. It
Yeah.
is just, it's insane. You play it anytime unless you already have three upgrades. It does work, and and early on, like, it's nuts. Like, could you really roll a bad side on this die other than the blank with, early on?
Yeah.
It combos with other blue cards as well, obviously getting the blue abilities out, but also, also, its ability to roll blanks can be helpful in blue if you're running Power of the Dark Side, and it's a very powerful card. And I agree. I mean, I think that for me, if we're looking specifically at villain cards, that's the card that I look to. I actually don't love a lot of the villain uh, blue upgrades as much as other people do. I mean, Force Stroke, don't get me wrong, it's great. I get that, but it's not, to me. It's not like the end all be all, like Force Throw is for me.
Yeah.
But Immobilize is the other card that obviously it's the hard removal. It's really good, but it's only showing a blank, so I don't even think that that's necessarily that impressive. So for me, it's pretty much just Holocron.
Yeah, I agree. It's a thing as the more I've played, the less impressed I am by the force powers, which is probably a good thing. Like,
Yeah, yeah.
Mind Probe in blue heroes is underwhelming to me. Paying 4 for a Mind Probe seems like so much. But getting a
Yep.
Mind Probe for 0, now we're
Yes.
talking.
Now we're talking, and it's that sometimes is just the game. If you land the first turn
Yeah.
Mind Probe, that sometimes is too much to come back from if the dice can be favorable.
So this is the last thing I want to say about it. This is how crazy I am. I don't remember what the exact deck was, but it was like a multi-color, multi-character deck that all had like low health. I think it was maybe a 4-character deck, and I was looking at it and I was like, I don't really want a lot of upgrades that are going to die on guys. So I don't really want to actually have force throws and stuff, and it's not a control deck, so I don't really want to mobilize. But you know what? I'm still putting Holocron in because it has a focus side. It's free. It has the +1 resource, and it freaks people out, right? You roll the special, and they're like, "Oh God, oh no! What if he has a mind probe?" And then they control the die, and you're like, "Yeah, I actually don't even have anything other than like one force choke in this deck."
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah. All right. So what's your blue card? Is it also Holocron?
Yeah, yeah, Luke. Yeah, I
Okay.
mean, it's to me for villain. If we're talking about villain specific, it's Holocron every day. No
All right.
questions asked.
Yellow villain to me is really hard because yellow villain has piles of good cards, just piles of them. But I think the one that I'm consistently drawn to. I'm gonna say real quick, Crime Lord. If I want like an alternate win condition, that is the one. But normally, if I'm just like, oh, I'm building a deck, Hunker Down is so good that I find myself just putting yellow into decks to have Hunker Down plus all the other good yellow cards. But Hunker Down is just amazing. Upgrade goes on a guy every turn. You exhaust it for a shield. They can get rid of it if they do enough
But
melee
hold
damage
on,
to.
are we talking? Are we going to talk specifically villain card? Because that's a neutral, right?
That's a good point. But
Yes, Hunker Down is great. Yes, Hunker Down is great.
all right. Well, I'm gonna count it. I'm counting it for me.
Okay.
Hunker Down's
Okay.
my card. It's amazing.
I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go with On the Hunt. To me, it costs one less than it should.
Yes.
It has two special sides. It is very good. Now, granted, it does have a couple of blue sides, but in yellow, I also find, like we were talking about Fighting Dirty. We're talking about, the different characters you can have. Like, I would say the melee, specifically if you're going just in the yellow and maybe into red, it's not as good. But if you're going into blue, the melee is fine to have on your side as well.
Sure.
So On the Hunt is really good. It really does win games. You get it out early, specifically if you're playing Django, because they can't activate him really.
Mm.
If you put it on him, and that's just really brutal, and it costs one.
Yeah.
The one cost in this game, every single resource is that much more significant. You get controlled by one. On your 2, you still have On the Hunt. If you end up getting 3, the one left over, you still get On the Hunt. It's very good, and yeah, I'm just drawn to it.
Yeah, and just so we know, the text of the special is really important. It says, remove all shields from a character. You may spend one resource to remove one of its character or upgrade dice. And that's not if you remove a shield you can do this, because removing all shields, 0 counts as that. And it also doesn't say a then.
Yes, correct.
So you basically roll this, you trigger it, and for one resource, you remove any one of their dice. That is insane.
Let's put it in a couple of contexts, right? If they have 3 shields, it is doing 3 damage to their shields.
Yeah. And
removing a die. And there's 2 of those on the die. For 1. Is there a special? Is there a dice? I mean, is there one like this where there's 2 specials that of like a, obviously we're talking about like Holocron. It's a great example, right? It's 2 specials and it costs 1 or less. It's a very rare thing, especially if it's a bonkers ability, like we mentioned Sith Holocron has, and like On the Hunt has. And this is a very consistent pattern for a very powerful card. Because most of the time you're playing at least 2, likely 3 or 4 to have 2 very powerful specials on an upgrade.
Yeah, it's really crazy. I don't know how it came out at 1 cost, to be honest. I think it's because it costs 1 every time, and so the theory is that's half of your turn's income, so it is pretty steep in this game, but it's bananas.
But good news is you're playing yellow, so let the resources flow.
Yes. All right, moving to red. This one's really hard for me. I don't really like villain red. Like, I love Grievous. I think he's awesome, but I do not like red villain cards all that much. And so I picked Tactical Mastery because it's a great card. Tactical Mastery, for 1, you spot a red character and you just get 2 actions. And anytime you can break the rules of the game and take an action and your opponent goes, it's my action, and you go, no. I get another action to resolve stuff or to do something else then it's really, really good. And I used to play a Vader Trooper deck a lot, and it was so good in that because Vader would be loaded up with upgrades. I would roll Vader knowing that I got another action. And I don't know what his roll is going to be. Maybe it's going to be 6 damage. I'm just going to kill a dude. Maybe it's going to be a force throw special, and I get to chuck that die that's bothering me. Maybe, worst case scenario, I whiff on everything, and I just trigger a Mobilize and turn the thing to a blank that was really bothering me. So it's a very versatile card, and it's really strong.
Simple and easy. I'm going to go by starting like this. General Grievous doesn't interest me very much. And if that's the case, if you look at the red cards, specifically in villains, there's just guns. Everything is range damage. And for me, the most common thing in all of the Star Wars movies, well, specifically 4, 5, and 6, is the I don't know if it's maybe it's not the one. Maybe this is a newer rifle. I don't know. But the F-11D rifle, to me, is just so. Every time I play it, I actually feel really good about it. It's got the redeploy, which I love. The +1 and +2 damage, resource special, 2 for 1. It has a solid die, and like I said, every time I get it, like I'm happy.
Hmm.
Like we're talking about that deck that I was making today, or that I've been playing. Like having that in my opener, like I'll keep it just in case I don't mulligan into the jetpack that I'm looking for. And this is really, really good. You pair this with a stormtrooper, and you become a very scary character. Like it's a very legitimate character of 2 dice, rolling those 2 dice for that. And if he does end up getting killed, redeploy for me is just so powerful, and it can really change the game. And its specials isn't bad either. It has a lot of damage coming out of an upgrade, and every time I play red, I think I put them in my deck, except for if you're playing Grievous.
Huh. I'm
So
really
for me,
surprised to hear you say that. This is one of the cards that I don't like.
oh man,
And
I
now I
love
feel
it.
like I need to reevaluate this card. But I don't know. I don't like the special that much. I feel like letting your opponent make choices is usually a bad situation.
Sure, sure.
It has 2 pluses, which is okay, but with stormtroopers rolling so many blanks, it's dicey. And then the 2 for 1, I hate paying a resource to resolve a side. That side better be awesome, and that's not that great.
I agree that the die on this doesn't seem that good, but every time it comes down, it always becomes significant for me in my games. So I just have to appreciate it. I think it's valuable, and I think that once again, redeploy, you get a lot of value out of redeploy on
Yeah,
this weapon, and like I said, I agree with you. I wouldn't. 2 for 1's garbage. The pluses are pluses, which are not necessarily as good. But if you're playing a deck that just has guns, it often
yeah,
might as well be damage.
yep,
And that's 3 damage faces, which, as we've mentioned, is very powerful. Specifically when you get lower in the upgrade slots, it doesn't come out as good as this. And
yeah,
while you're right, letting them distribute's good. It's also like 4 damage faces, and
yeah. That's true.
I feel like I said, when I play it, I'm I often am very proud of its results, and maybe that's because I'm lucky. But like the resource is like the one thing that I would want on it. Maybe obviously maybe a shield would be better, but a resource is really helpful too, specifically if you're pairing it into yellow. And
Yeah,
it just feels good. It goes in a lot of decks when you
hmm.
got guns, so
Yeah,
I don't think that it's not good.
yeah. It's interesting. I often cut that card from my decks. I'll have to give it a new look now that you not only like it but love it.
I do love it. I love it. Maybe it's because I think redeploy is crazy in this game. Like to me, that's just a nuts ability.
Yeah,
But I compare it to anything else in the red camp as far as weapons are concerned, and I like it better than all the other ones. So,
that's fair.
and I just
All
like
right,
upgrades because that's how you get more dice.
let's move to heroes. Heroes for me, there are really no blue hero cards specifically that I love, but there is one blue hero card that I will build whole decks around, and that's patience. Um, Anytime I'm running a mill deck, you will see patience in it. I've seen a lot of people run like a Padme Akbar deck, and they don't have blue, and I always look at that and go, "Are you out of your freaking mind?" Like the way I build a mill deck is you just put in billions of upgrades, and you're having the best time of your life, rolling 12 dice, and then you just go, patience. There's half your deck gone. Okay, cool. Let's see you win now.
Yeah, yeah. I mean that's that is very good.
Yeah,
I
so
mean,
that's
patience
my
can
card.
just literally win you the game. If you get 2 of them back to back, I mean, it could just be the game.
Yeah, it's funny because I've never played two like that. Because even let's say you get your first one off, now they have 10 cards. They're just drawing up to 5 anyway next turn. Like you might as well just wait the 2 turns rather than trying to do the double patience. I just find that to be overkill. What the double patience is awesome for, and I've won several games like this. You patience them once, they get down to no cards, but they have Starship Graveyard as the battleground that they've chosen. You do not let them choose it, but they won the initiative, they chose it, and they're like, ha ha ha, I'm just going to go first every time, claim as early as possible, and always have a card. And so I had someone do that. They claimed, took a card, and they're like, I don't see how you can win this unless you happen to have another patience. And I was like, well, obviously I have another patience. Boom! Decked you a second time.
Yeah, no, that's pretty gross.
Yeah, that was fun.
For me, I actually haven't played much Blue Heroes, so I can't say that there's one that I like more than the other. The one that interests me the most, because when I look at a Blue Hero deck, I look at all the die faces, and you actually end up getting like literally every die face. on most decks. Because
Sure.
the Force abilities have like weird range damage where your Jedi don't normally carry those.
Yep.
And you pretty much get, and then there's also like weird like disruption or weird discard this on these random die for the different, depending on which Jedi you're playing.
Oh, I know where this is going now. I know where it's going.
Force misdirection is really
Yep.
interesting to me, and I think that it is a blowout card in the right situation. Like if they focus, like if they like double focus a card and into like 2 melee, and you've rolled a melee, you just literally you just removed 3 of their dice, and they use their focus very effectively to do so.
Yeah.
And then now they've got 6 damage, and then you remove all that, and it's just like, man, that's just brutal.
Yeah. So Force Misdirection says for
Oh, I
one
apologize.
cost event, choose a symbol showing one of your blue dice, then remove all of an opponent's dice showing that symbol. And so I was talking shop with some other guy, and I was like, "Hey, why is Force Misdirection in here? It seems like an odd include." And he was like, "Are you joking? Force Misdirection is the whole reason to even play Blue Hero." I was like, "Dang, okay,
I mean,
all right, my
it,
bad, man."
it seems like it could be nuts in the right situation. And like I said, you do have access to pretty much every die in most blue hero decks because the upgrades are real weird. They've got like every facing. They're actually, in my opinion, I think it's pretty bad. But you're gonna run force throw, which pulls out the disruptions, the range damage.
Yep.
Lightsabers and your Jedi generally have the melee damage and shields. And there's most force abilities have range attacks on them.
Yep.
So it's good. One with the force, if you're getting that crazy into it, has the focus, the pistol, the shield, the resource, and the disruption. And then, like I said, your characters they're all packing melee. So it's
My
it's not
big
bad.
problem with the card is that it specifically says it has to be a blue die. So you really have to be heavy blue. I had a deck where I don't remember exactly what I was doing, but it was like 2 Rey and Han or something, and there were barely any blue cards in the deck. And I had just chucked this in there thinking like, oh, this is going to be a big blowout card. And I even did a whole thing where I like flipped a die to the melee side in anticipation in case he rolled the nuts with Vader. He rolls the nuts with Vader. I'm like, boom! Force misdirection. They're all gone. And he's like, yeah, but your melee is a yellow. And I was like, no, you're kidding me.
Yeah, you kind of do have to be all in, but there are certain things. I think if you're running a Qui-Gon deck or a Luke deck, you're
Sure.
more likely to have more blue cards than if you're running a Rey deck.
Yep,
Because Rey is very much more a support character.
exactly.
So I think that's where you will find those things.
Yep. Be careful is the bottom line and know your cards. I almost always learn about cards by messing them up. Like that is my best way to remember a card. I will never ever forget Force Direction is spot a blue die, or I mean you use a blue die.
Yep.
All right. For me, for red, I know you're gonna be annoyed by this, but it's leadership, and I know it's a neutral card, but the reason I call it a rebel card or a hero card is because it works so well with somebody like Luke Skywalker and with somebody like Han. All of these cards where you are loading them up with dudes, and you're able to have Akbar in the deck, who is so awesome in this role as like he's got a double focus, so he works with all in. He works really well with leadership. It works so well with the heroes, and I've tried to import leadership into villain decks, and it just doesn't function nearly as well. So in my head, I've just started calling it a hero card, and I really like it. By the way, leadership says for one, exhaust a unique red character to unexhaust another character. So essentially, if you have Akbar and Luke, you go with Luke, you swing, you do 12 damage. And then you play leadership, Akbar exhausts, and Luke is ready to go again.
Yep. Pretty gross. I mean, I think that it is what it is. I mean, you're paying for it. It does a lot of work, and yeah, Red Heroes is so uninspiring to me, and I want it to be inspiring. It just isn't.
Yeah.
For me, I'm trying to be good, and I'm trying to pick an actual Red Hero card.
Just cheat, man. Just cheat.
There isn't one, man. You know what I do like? I like Scout. I found that is actually pretty good in decks where you're looking to mess with them. You have the focus. The upgrade is really good because you get to, or sorry, the upgrade. The special is really good because you get to know their whole hand and discard the cheapest card from it. Cheapest card's usually not necessarily the best, but often it's a 0-cost card, and those are something they're looking to play. And if it's in their hand, they either just drew it or they're looking to keep it for the right situation. So it's not a good answer. It's
I
not the
think
best answer, but it is good. I
I
like
think it's a
Scout.
great answer. I think Scout is one of the top 3 or 4 one-cost cards in the game. I think it's phenomenal. The special is crazy because you totally undersold it. You're like, oh, it's a zero-cost card. What's so important about it is it's oftentimes a 0 or 1 cost mitigation event that they were
Correct.
saving to be able to
Yeah.
wreck your dice.
Yep.
Yeah, that this card is just insane.
And
And the
once
day
again,
it was released,
falls.
there was
Hold on
a
a second.
big sigh of relief because Holocron now has some sort of answer.
It also follows our rule, right? It's less than 2 cost upgrade with 2 specials that are
Yeah,
very solid.
yeah, exactly.
So that means it must be good. I'm actually going to, while you're just talking, I'm just going to go through and like look for that. Is that rule consistent? Less than 2 cost, 2 specials.
There's not a lot. I
There's
do
hell
want
I
to say one more card that I really love and think is going to be just insane in the future, and that's It's a Trap, which is 1 cost ambush, ambush being the key here. Choose a symbol showing on an opponent's die, then turn any number of your red dice to sides showing that symbol. This card is ridiculous. So what it's really good with is somebody like Poe, where if they roll a special, they're screwed, right? For 1 cost, you spin Poe to a special, and then you immediately resolve him. And it's also really good if you can get enough red dice out there with range damage, which admittedly is fairly difficult for red. That's really what's holding this card back. Then it just wins the game. If they roll a single range damage, you're like, oh, that's ranged. Okay, I'm going to pay 1. I'm going to get a +3 on this, a 2, a 2, a 1, a 2, a 2, and resolve them all and kill all your guys.
Yep, no, it's gross. I mean, Poe is obviously like their alpha male as far as like damage is looking concerned, but when when another character comes out that's looking to put out a little more range damage, it's definitely going to be gross because yeah, flipping those die over. I mean, it could be huge. I mean, you're trying to get. I guess you could use a lot of the upgrades to try to make that happen. You've got the big blaster rifle that does 2 unblockable damage, or 3 if you want to flip things to specials.
Yep.
So I don't know.
I feel like that's what's holding it back is that there aren't enough red upgrade dice that do damage. Like there's only like 2 or 3, and so you're going, okay, well that's fine, but I can't be all in on this one event to win me the game with like no activators for it. But in 2 sets from now, when there's like 8 red weapons, oh my goodness, this card is going to be very fearsome.
Yeah, I agree. That's pretty good.
All right, let's move on to yellow then. Apparently, I have not chosen
Hunker
one
down!
yet. So you choose the first one.
I'm just making fun of your hunker down call from before, which obviously is a great card. Man, oh man, I'm trying to look at. I kind of wanted to pick an event. I kind of didn't want to pick the DL44 because it is so good.
Well, pick it, man. It's great.
It is great. Yeah, I'm going to pick the DL44. I mean, if you're playing Han, it is the ultimate card. It removes, it ambushes. If you can get the graveyard out and your deck is able to tick and actually grab battlefields with ease in your matchup, then you can be overriding it, re-ambushing it, and getting free actions, getting free shields for Han. I mean, it is his blaster. It does have 2 blanks, but its sides are all good. The worst case scenario, you get a resource if you roll a die that has a good side on it. And best case, and otherwise you're looking at just a crap ton of damage.
Yeah, it's just it's a really, really strong card that fits really well into the Ray Han deck, and it also has a little control too. Being able to pull off a die when you play it is pretty strong. The card I'm going to go with is Second Chance.
Second Chance. That's exactly what I was going to say.
Yeah, it's so good. Like 3 cost, yellow character only, but that's fine. You're going to put it on Han or some other guy who's really important in your deck. Before attached character would be defeated, instead heal 5 damage from it and discard this upgrade. So in other words, when that character dies, it resets to 5 health left. And that's really crazy. Like, it just wrecks opponents' plans. Like, okay, so here's what I'm going to do. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to kill Han with these dice, and then he won't even get to resolve his dice because he hasn't even rolled yet. And you're like, okay, so it looks like you're going to kill Han. Second chance. I'm like, oh my goodness. This just wrecks everything. And then my favorite thing, Jason, is when you have like somebody awesome, right? And then you have a weaker character like Padme or something, just supporting that character. And they're like, okay, man, that other character has so much health. I'm going to go for Padme first and just take care of her. And then I will turn my attention over to this other character. And then when they get halfway through, you second chance them. They're like, you are the worst. Like, I didn't even want to kill this character anyway. And now you've negated everything I did. Oh, it's so fun.
Yeah, I remember a game with a certain Tiny Grimes where that was literally the case.
I don't remember that. That happened?
Yeah, when you're playing the Luke and Padme, and I was like, "Oh, I almost killed her. That she got second chance. It's like not even worth it anymore."
Yep.
And then I killed nobody instead.
Yeah, it's the worst feeling ever when they second chance a guy that you didn't even really care about anyway, and you're just regretting your whole life at that point. You're like, why did we even play this game? Like from turn one, apparently I had lost and I didn't even know it. Great.
It is a very, very annoying card. And as you mentioned, you have your options right now are the following, right? It's Hired Gun. You got Han, Finn, and Padme.
Yep.
Han is going to get his shields back. And you have Padme, who's purely a support character and is likely, like you said, going to get gunned down. So, the two that you're likely to be seeing, and then obviously Hired Gun, which you probably won't be putting in your deck if Hired Guns are only yellow, but you may just for the health.
I love Hired Gun, by the way.
About it,
he's so good.
I do too. One thing about it that's really good too is it also soaks additional damage if said damage is required to take out the character in the first place. So if they have a 3 damage face and that's the only way they can deal damage and you only have 1 health, it also soaks up 2 damage that just goes away into the ether. Then you heal your 5, and that's just annoying.
Yeah, it's really good. I like it a lot. All right. I want to turn to the rules corner real quick. Every now and then we have rules come up that are really interesting. And I had somebody on the SoCal Facebook chat talking about an experience they had that they thought was really lame and hurt their enjoyment of the game. And that was this. So these two players were playing. They both ran out of cards on the same turn and looked at each other and said, who wins? And then they looked in the rule book and it said, whoever controls the battlefield wins. And they were like, well, this is dumb. Like, we just ran out of cards and then Bob won for no reason. And while that would be really annoying and unsatisfying if you didn't know the rule, if you do know the rule, it's actually really fascinating because you should be able to sort of see this coming, right? Like 3 turns down the line even. Oh, man, we're both really low on cards. Our characters have a lot of health. This may come down to getting milled and needing the battlefield, and it really becomes this cat and mouse game. Like, if your opponent mills you and you have the opportunity to mill them, don't. You've lost already. You have to do anything but that. And I think it's actually a really fascinating way to end the game, but you have to know the rules going in to make it this fascinating chess match.
Yeah, 2 things. 1, that's incredibly interesting. I didn't even know that. 2, I was under the impression, and I guess I'm wrong, that don't you, when you run out of cards in your hand and your deck, you lose? Like, I thought that had just happened. Does that not happen to the end of the turn?
Yeah, that's what makes Mill so interesting as a mechanic, and what I like so much about it. It's you have to run out of cards in your deck, you have to run out of cards in your hand, but that doesn't take effect until the upkeep phase. So if you can at some point put a card back in your deck, or just murder all their dudes and not get to the upkeep phase, you're still fine.
Okay. Very interesting.
So I've actually had some games where this has happened, right? And I could tell I was going to be milled, and it was a matter of time. Maybe I could survive one more turn, but probably not. And so what I did is I just kept re-rolling with my dice, knowing, I did the odds. It was like an 80% chance I would kill him. So I discard 1 to go for it. I miss. It's still an 80% chance. And so I say, you know what? I'm going to go for it. And I discard the last card, and the guy's like, you lose! I was like, no, and I explained the mill condition, rolled the dice for the win, and then killed him, knowing that, maybe I was going to lose, but it was only about a 20% chance.
There you go.
All right, so there you go. That's how it works. If you know that rule, I think it's really interesting, don't you?
I do. I think it's good because it gives definitive answers, especially when you do have a time frame like it does to win the actual game. That is, like you said, that is important. And I think the battlefield is just such an interesting mechanic in the first place, and I really do like it. And I think that's another good utilization of that because sometimes you do have to give up value to secure the battlefield. So.
Exactly. Yep. Maybe you have to not do all the things you want to do, knowing that you really need to be able to get that first action so you get the first mill so that, if they mill you back, then you just claim the battlefield and win. And it just really makes that battlefield so much more important. And you're really thinking at that point like 2 full turns ahead, and every action you're going down the chain of events like a chess match, right? Like I do this, they do this, they do this, they do this, they mill, they win. Oh no, nope, nope, that line doesn't work. That one loses my queen. I need to try a new line.
Yeah.
As a
Very
former
similar.
chess player, that really fascinates me.
I did want to say one thing. We didn't really talk about neutral cards at all,
Sure.
and I have a love affair with the holdout blaster, even though it once again has a 2-for-1 up for 1 resource. I love it.
Everyone has a holdout affair with a love affair with holdout blaster though. Like I don't think you're unique here. It's amazing.
It's just amazing.
Yeah, the fact that it has ambush, and I remember many moons ago when I first saw it on Ray, and someone did it to me, and we both sort of sat there and we're like, wait, does this mean because it has ambush and because Ray gets an additional action, does that really mean Ray gets 2 actions? Did anyone even bother playtesting this game? This is complete madness.
Yep. Yeah, it's just a solid piece. It's good. And I will note that for the same price, although it doesn't have a solid damage face on it, the F11D does have more faces that produce damage.
Yeah.
And it produces an equal amount of damage except for the special.
Yep.
It doesn't have ambush, but if you're looking for raw damage, it does produce more raw damage.
Yeah, it's an interesting point that I hadn't really thought about.
Because you always want to put a holdout blaster in your deck. Not always, but like a lot of the time you do. And it produces worse damage. And if your goal is to kill them as fast as possible, I do believe that the other one will actually do a better job.
The big difference, though, is the amount of modified sides. So I think it really depends on the deck, right? If your deck,
you gotta have a lot of pistols.
Yeah,
you gotta have.
Your deck is all guns, you could be in business. If your deck is like a Han Ray deck, and you don't have as many guns, obviously you can't run that weapon in there. But just as an example, it's a little bit tough.
Oh man, it's
all
good.
Right. One last thing, we have a viewer question. This one's gonna be kind of tough because it's really reaching here. But a viewer asked us. So I pulled 2 Leias. What deck would she be good in? Like, how do I make an Elite Leia work? So I'm going to go first because I thought about this a little bit. And I've been actually thinking about this, but Elite Leia is 16, regular Poe is 14, regular Han is 14. So they actually both pair, but they also pair the other way where you can do Elite Poe, Elite Han, single Leia. So most people go that direction.
Yep.
But I will say an Elite Leia Poe deck and it's a trap deck could be really interesting because you have a lot of ways to hit Poe's special now. You have It's a Trap. You have multiple rerolls with Leia's dice. Leia's dice have 3 damage sides. Like, her dice are good. A lot of people underrate them. I think there's ways to use Elite Leia in a lot of decks, but those are just 2 ideas that pop into my mind.
To me, whenever I look at a character like this, she's got okay damage, but it's just the flexibility of the focus and then her action. So I'm looking to utilize her action more times, and I think that specifically, like, you roll a blank, that's okay. You can reroll up to 2 dice. I think that I really want to utilize her with Qui-Gon Jinn, and I'll tell you why. Because it's 19 points if you want to go Elite Leia. And Qui-Gon, you really are looking to put those upgrades on him and then use the shield upgrades that you often get. Now, granted, you don't have access to some of the juicy yellow cards, like Diplomatic Immunity, which could be really good with him. But I think that you can utilize his ability to do damage just for shields, and then her ability to mitigate your dice and or change up your dice with the focus, because you're rolling 2 dice, and also her action. That's kind of something that I was thinking of, and then you could use the red cards to keep your characters alive as well as the blue cards to keep your characters alive, so there's a little bit of synergy in that regard.
Yeah, you have stuff like Survival Gear and Scout, which is giving you shields or, pulling the stuff out of their hand.
Yep, so that's kind of what I was thinking. I don't think it's a great answer, as I'm not sure if I would run an Elite Leia ever, but I don't hate it. I mean, You get 2 chances to use her action. I'm not sure that her action is good, but it's certainly good if you roll a blank, I guess. To me, it's just
Yeah.
interesting.
Her action to me is one of the most underwhelming.
It
Anytime
is.
you tell me, hey man, I will let you remove one of your dice to re-roll the other one, and then as soon as you roll it into something good, I'll take it from you. That's just not a scenario I like putting
If
myself in all
her
that much.
action said remove this die to reroll any number of dice, like discarding a card, I
Yeah.
still don't think it would be broken.
Yeah,
So
it would be good.
it'd be certainly better, but it wouldn't be that crazy because you're still removing dice from your pool,
Yeah.
and your goal in bringing dice is to have good ones. Now, granted, most characters don't have great ones. I shouldn't say most characters, but you have ones that you like and you want to synergize. But it's generally the upgrades that are doing a lot of the heavy lifting, unless of course you're like a Darth Vader type or someone with a 6 special like Poe.
Yeah.
But you're looking to usually utilize those dice to do things to make your deck work really well. So it's tough. It's not good.
Yeah.
It's not good. It's not good, listener.
I think that's interesting actually.
I think
Leia
get
Qui-Gon. It is interesting because she also has a focus side. She has a resource side. She does quite a bit of damage, so it could be a way to sort of
his dice is fine. His die is fine. You could get 2 damage or 2 shields out of a single
yeah.
focus, but he doesn't really need a second die because his ability, your goal is just to give him shields using all of the cards in your deck to just shunt damage out. So when I saw that, I was like, well, I was trying to figure out how to use Qui-Gon, and his price point is really frustrating.
Yeah. I think that's on purpose. I got to think that in playtesting, they realized that Qui-Gon had the ability to be really broken, and so they had to be very careful with him.
Yeah, I think when we get more cards, because at his elite level, you have 13 left.
Yeah.
So you really can't do anything great. There's gonna be a 13 character that's good, like or elite 13 even, which would be crazy.
Yeah.
And
The Elite 13 in another color that lets you do something really good is going to be strong. But you're right. Like if Akbar was 13 or Padme was 13 or something like that, it could get real crazy.
Yeah, I was really hoping that Padme was 13 when I first looked at it. I was like, oh, and I was like, well, I can always bring a hired gun. You're like, wait, you can't even bring anything else if you bring the hired gun, so it's just garbage.
Yeah, that's always disappointing when you're wasting several spots.
Yeah.
Quick thing before we go, I really am hoping that there's a way to fix that. Like if you have 3 left, like Imperial Assault is a good example of this, where you can start with a 1-cost upgrade. That's not amazing, but like it's 1 more health for a guy, or some way to utilize those wasted points so you don't feel like, well, I just can't even run hired gun Qui-Gon because in my mind it is screaming at me, what are you doing? You're wasting 4 points. Are you insane?
I personally don't. I'm going to take the opposite approach because I think as we fill out more characters, it's just going to be. There's going to be some crappy characters too, by the way. I think there's going to be some real crappy ones. I think we're going to go lower than 7, even worse than the Stormtrooper.
I think so.
Yeah, and he'll just be crap. They'll not be good, but they'll be like, I don't know, like a droid type maybe. I know that's kind of support based, but I think that could also be a character or something like that. I don't know, some thug dude who's not very good.
Yeah, just someone to have to kill him also.
Correct. Just to get that.
I'm not sure they will, only because it will be
7.
too easy to bring rainbow decks at that point, and that's going to be their great problem to juggle.
It's a fair point. But we'll definitely get 8s and 7s out of all the colors one day. So.
Yep. And probably some more politics and rays that they're really efficient and cheap.
And really, yeah. But Ray's got 10 health. Politique has 8.
All right. Well, thanks so much for coming by, Jason. And before you go, anything you want to plug before you go?
Yeah, as you mentioned at the beginning, I am one of the owners of Broken Egg Games, and we have had a blast making Destiny tokens. We've even been improving our processes and making them incredibly vibrant, incredibly smooth, and we are super proud of what we've done. I think that the art is incredible, and we have a lot of plans to make tons of different Destiny tokens. And I know, as a spoiler, we will be coming out with a Force user set soon that will be very sick. with lots of awesome things that you, if you're a big fan of Jedi or Sith, you can get behind. So we look forward to doing that, having fun expansions, and hopefully also having prize kits so that we're not just stuck with what Fantasy Flight has. We can make some unique products so we can support the community, support more play, and get more people playing Destiny and having a good time and getting some fun, unique prizes along the way. So definitely things that we're looking at. And specifically for retailers that we work with. But if you're looking to get a 6 set of tokens, you can check us out at brokenegggames.com. You've probably seen it in the chats. People post up their tokens all the time, and they're really fantastic. They are, in fact, UV printed onto acrylic, so it is really as good of the art as it looks on the screen when you look at a picture of them. It is not cardboard. It is acrylic. People are always like, "Are you sure that's even possible?" I'm like, "Yes, it's possible, and it works." So,
Yeah, that was my first question to you. I was like, okay, so I see this art looks amazing. How bad does it look when it's printed on whatever it is you're printing it on? And you're like, no, that's the art. And I was like, no, I mean, like we all know science hasn't developed that yet. So what's the real answer?
yeah, and like I said, we've been improving the process, and we love the feedback that we get from people, and we are looking forward to doing a lot more in Destiny as well as other games. If you play any other games, we support a lot of the Fantasy Flight games as well, so definitely check it out.
And I'll just say, I have a set of them. I love them. My daughter and I, we use them. The funny thing is, we both like the light side better. And I have a dark side awful deck, and she has an amazing loot deck. And she forces me to use the dark side. She's like, no, you're the dark side, Daddy. You have to use the dark side of them. I'm like, okay.
Yeah, that's one of the cool things about the set. It does come double-sided, so you can thematically use the tokens for your set. And we also had a really long debate, and I know I talked with Tiny about this originally too, about making them double-sided, as in the damage being like 1s and 3s. And while we think that's very efficient and very cool, and I do like that as a game point, Fantasy Flight recently has taken a really big stand against manipulating on-board pieces to change values, specifically found in dice. But having that ability to flip it over could cause a touchy game state. I already find myself asking a lot about the health of characters, and I wouldn't want anyone to feel like I had the ability to cheat by making them flippable.
Yeah.
So,
And not even intentional. You've got dice flying all over. One gets
exactly.
whacked, it gets flipped. Yeah, I'm not like theoretically, like online and theoretically, I love the double sided, but on the table when it's not quite as clear, you're across from somebody, I definitely don't want double sided.
Yeah,
As far as
we wanted it to be super efficient, but it just doesn't. It just doesn't. It doesn't fall in line with what Fantasy Flight has said in the past, and we would be worried that outlawing the manipulating of things that can potentially change. That could be a thing that they do. So we want to try to be as clean cut as possible and make sure that both the players of the game, during a game, outside of the game, Fantasy Flight makers of the game, that they're satisfied with the product that we put forth. So
yeah, that's a fair point. And I gotta say, I'm so happy that you can't track with dice because there's so many dice flying around, man. Stuff gets knocked over all the time in this game.
They do. And
it's the messiest game I've ever played.
Yeah, it's pretty rough. We definitely have some ideas for controlling the dice, and we're looking forward to that. And I think that people will have really cool dice boxes and things like that as time goes on. But for me, I just like rolling them on the table. That's just the kind of person I am. But they are some big dice. These are some big dice.
Yeah. I roll them right on my mat and then pick them up and put them out into the play field. So
there you go.
All right. Well, you can find me on Twitter at Tiny Grimes Games. You can find me on YouTube. Just search for Tiny Grimes, Star Wars Destiny. You'll see, I don't know, I'm probably up to 25 videos by now. And I'm here every week on the Smugglers Den. So I hope you guys enjoyed the show. And Jason and I had a great time today. And we'll see you next time.
See ya.